A woman built like you ought to know better than to steal food from hungry families, Mayor Silas Crew said, loud enough for everyone in the meeting hall to hear. Nadine Weller stood beneath the yellow lamps, with snow melting on her shoulders and 40 pairs of eyes fixed on her broad body. 3 winters earlier, she had opened her smokehouse to those same people when the supply wagons failed to arrive. She had fed their children, dressed their wounds, and buried their animals when the cold became too strong. Now they stared at her as if she were a stranger. Her own brother stood beside the mayor with his head lowered, saying nothing. Nadine did not yet know that Hugh had mortgaged the ranch their mother left them. She did not know that the missing winter relief money was tied to stolen land, altered deeds, and a secret her quiet neighbor's dead wife had carried to her grave. She only knew that the town had decided she was guilty. The first heavy snow was coming, and someone wanted her gone before it arrived. But the woman they had mocked for years was about to become the one person who could save Weller Ridge from the men who owned its fear. The meeting hall smelled of wet wool, lamp oil, and old pine boards. Nadine held herself still near the long table at the front. At 41, she had learned that people watched an obese woman differently when she entered a room. Some looked away too quickly. Others stared as if her body had made a promise about her character. They thought she must be lazy because she was large, though she rose before dawn every day. They thought she must be weak because her face was soft and round, though her strong hands carried scars from wire, rope, hot pans, broken tools, and frightened horses. Her hazel eyes had a patient look that people often mistook for surrender. Her thick black hair, streaked with gray at the temples, was twisted into a practical knot that was already coming loose from the wind. "I did not take $1 from the relief fund," she said. Her voice was low, but the room went quiet enough to hear it. "I delivered beef, flour, dried beans, lamp oil, and medicine. I signed for what I brought. If the account is short, show me the account." Orson Pike, the town banker, tapped a stack of papers with one narrow finger. He had silver buttons on his vest and a face that always looked recently washed. "The account is here, Miss Weller. Your signature appears on 6 withdrawals." "That is not my signature." Someone near the back laughed. It was not a joyful sound. Nadine recognized Mrs. Bell, whose youngest boy Nadine had nursed through a lung fever the winter before. Mrs. Bell leaned toward another woman and whispered, "She always did like being thanked." Maybe thanks stopped being enough. The words reached Nadine as clearly as if they had been spoken beside her ear. Her face warmed. She remembered that sick child sweating against her arm while she sat awake all night. She remembered carrying broth through waist-deep snow because the Bell family had no horse. She forced the memory down. Goodness offered freely could not be turned into a debt, even when the person who received it later became cruel. Hugh Weller finally looked at her. He was 5 years younger, lean and handsome, with their mother's dark eyes and their father's easy smile. That smile had carried him through unpaid bills, failed cattle deals, and promises that somehow became Nadine's duty to keep. "Nadine," he said gently, "if something happened, if you borrowed money because the ranch was in trouble, you should say so. We can find a way through this." For a moment, she could not understand him. Then the betrayal settled over her like cold water. "You know I did not take it." Hugh rubbed a hand across his mouth. "I know the ranch has been expensive. I know you've been worried. The ranch is not in trouble." Mayor Crew leaned back in his chair. He owned the largest feed store in 3 counties and wore his public concern like a clean coat. "Then you will have no objection to a full review. Until that is complete, the town council asks you to surrender the relief books and remain available for questioning." "You already have the books." Hugh carried them here. Hugh looked toward the floor. Nadine felt the room change. It was a small movement, almost nothing, but it told her the meeting had begun long before she arrived. Tomas Arrieta stood against the far wall with his hat in his hands. He was tall, weathered, and quiet, with dark hair touched by winter at the sides. He had lived alone with his daughter since his wife died 6 years earlier. Town gossip called him proud, because he did not talk when others expected him to. Nadine had always thought he simply refused to waste words. Now his steady brown eyes moved from Hugh to the papers, then to Pike and Crew. "Let her see the signatures," Tomas said. Mayor Crew gave him a thin smile. "This is council business, Tomas. You accused her in a public room. That made it public business." The people shifted. No one liked hearing the plain truth when a softer lie had already made them comfortable. Pike gathered the papers too quickly. "The originals belong to the bank. She may inspect them in my office at an agreed time." "Then why bring them here?" Tomas asked. Crew struck the table with a small wooden block. "Enough. This meeting is finished." Nadine wanted to say more. She wanted to demand every page and hold it beneath the light. Instead, she saw the pleasure hidden in several faces and understood that they wanted her to lose control. They wanted the angry, greedy woman they had already described to one another. She buttoned her coat with fingers that did not shake until she reached the last button. "I will come to the bank at 9 tomorrow, she told Pike. "Do not misplace those papers before then." She turned and walked through the crowd. People drew back to give her room. A young man named Davy Trent, whose father sat on the council, murmured, "Careful, she might eat the evidence." Several people laughed. Nadine stopped. The old shame rose fast and hot, carrying every insult she had heard since girlhood. She looked at Davy until the laugh died in his throat. "Your mother came to my kitchen last February because there was no food in your house," she said. "She was brave enough to ask, and I was glad to help her. Do not make her need into something ugly just so you can feel tall for 1 minute." Davy's face turned red. Nadine stepped outside before anyone could answer. The evening wind struck her hard. Snow moved across the street in thin white lines, gathering beneath hitching rails and porch steps. She made it to her wagon before the first tear escaped. She wiped it away with the heel of her hand, angry that it had come at all. "Miss Weller!" Tomas followed her into the road. He put on his hat but kept several feet between them, as if he knew pity would feel like another insult. "Those papers were prepared before the relief money was reported missing," he said. Nadine looked at him. "How do you know?" "Pike used last month's bank seal. I saw the new seal when I renewed a note 2 weeks ago. You noticed that from the back wall. I notice men who hide paper when someone asks to read it." The corner of her mouth almost moved. "Then you have had plenty to notice in this town. I don't believe you stole anything." The kindness was so simple that it hurt more than the insults. Nadine tightened her grip on the wagon rail. "You may be the only one." "No, I may be the only one willing to say it tonight. There is a difference." Hugh came through the door behind them. "Nadine, wait. We should talk at home." She climbed onto the wagon seat. "You had a whole room in which to talk. I was trying to keep them calm. You were helping them bury me politely." She took the reins. Her old mare, Fern, started forward. Tomas moved out of the way, but Hugh caught the side of the wagon. "Don't go through the North Pass tonight. The weather is turning." Nadine looked down at her brother. At least the mountain never pretends its cold is kindness. She drove away, with the lamps of the town shrinking behind her. The road climbed through dark spruce and bare aspen. Wind worried at the wagon canvas. By the time Weller Ridge came into view, the snow had thickened. The ranch house sat in the shelter of 2 slopes, its windows dimly gold beneath a steep roof. Her mother, Ruth, had built the first 2 rooms with Nadine's father, then added a kitchen, a stone pantry, and a deep porch as the ranch grew. Every board held a memory. Nadine had believed memories were one thing no man could mortgage or steal. She would soon learn that even memory had a paper price, when the wrong people controlled the ink. She put Fern in the barn, rubbed the mare dry, and checked the cattle in the lower field. Work calmed her because animals did not pretend. A hungry cow called because it was hungry. A frightened horse pulled because it was frightened. By the time Nadine entered the house, her wet coat was heavy and her cheeks were numb. The fire had burned low. Hugh had left his boots by the stove, though he was still in town. A cup stood beside the basin with coffee dried at the bottom. Nadine added wood to the fire, lit another lamp, and saw a folded piece of paper pushed beneath the kitchen door. She opened it carefully. The message had been written in block letters with charcoal. Leave Weller Ridge before the first deep snow. The mountain keeps what it covers. Nadine read it twice. The room seemed to draw away from her. Wind pressed against the windows, and a branch scraped the roof with the slow sound of fingernails. She told herself it was meant to frighten her. That was obvious. Yet obvious fear still worked. She checked the back door, then the pantry latch. She lifted the old shotgun from above the mantel and found it unloaded. Hugh had used the shells during the autumn hunt and had not replaced them. She sat at the kitchen table with the warning beneath her palm. Her mother's ledger shelf stood across the room. Ruth Weller had recorded everything in firm, slanted writing. Calves born, steers sold, wages paid, grain bought, fences repaired. Nadine kept the same habit. She reached for the current ranch ledger and turned to the bank pages. The balance was lower than she remembered. 3 payments had been made to Pike's Bank during summer, each marked equipment loan. Nadine had never taken an equipment loan. Hugh arrived after midnight, smelling of whiskey and snow. He stopped when he saw her at the table. You should be asleep. What equipment did we buy in June? His expression shifted so slightly that another person might have missed it. Nadine had raised him from the age of 16 after their father disappeared and their mother became ill. She knew every version of his dishonest face. A new hay rake, he said. We have had the same hay rake for 9 years. Then it was fencing. I don't remember every expense. She turned the ledger toward him. You wrote equipment loan beside 3 payments. I handle the bank business. You asked me to. I asked you to deposit cattle money. I did not ask you to borrow against the ranch. Hugh removed his gloves 1 finger at a time. You always do this. You decide everything is yours because you work the hardest. Mother left the ranch to both of us. Exactly, both of us. But you act like I am a hired boy who needs permission to breathe. Did you mortgage the ranch? The silence answered before he did. Hugh went to the stove and held his hands over it. Only part of the lower pasture. It was a temporary note. I had an opportunity to buy cattle cheap in Mesa County. Where are the cattle? The deal changed. Where is the money? He turned toward her, anger filling the space where shame should have been. Do you know what it is like to be known as Nadine Weller's little brother? Every man in town thinks you built this place alone. Every widow thinks you are a saint because you bring soup. Every rancher praises your judgment. I wanted one thing that was mine. So you took what was ours. I was going to replace it. Nadine pushed the warning note across the table. Did you write this? Hugh read it. The color left his face. No. Do you know who did? No. You are lying about something. I am tired of being called a liar in my own house. Then tell me one truth I don't have to drag out of you. Hugh snatched his coat from the peg. You want the ranch so badly? Keep it. Keep the cold rooms, the sick calves, and every person who comes begging at the door. See how long they love you now. He walked back into the storm. Nadine did not follow. She sat alone until the fire dimmed again. At dawn, she discovered that the deed box was missing from the locked cabinet in her mother's room. The bank did not open at 9. A printed notice on the door claimed an inventory review, though Nadine could see Pike moving behind the curtains. She knocked until her knuckles hurt. No one answered. By 10, a deputy named Amos Reed crossed the street and told her she should return home. He was a decent man when decency cost nothing. That morning, it cost more than he wished to pay. The council asked me to keep things peaceful, he said. A locked door is peaceful. It is also useful when a banker has false signatures inside. Nadine, don't make this harder. For whom? Amos looked past her. There may be formal charges. Until then, I advise you not to leave the county. Someone sent a threat to my house last night. She showed him the note. He read it and frowned. Could be a cruel joke. It names the first deep snow. Everyone is talking about the weather. If that note had been pushed under Mayor Crew's door, would you call it a joke? Amos folded it and handed it back. Keep your doors locked. Tomas watched from the porch of the general store. His daughter Elena stood beside him. 17 years old, and as guarded as he was, though her watchfulness had a sharper edge. She had her mother's dark curls and her father's steady gaze. Nadine knew the girl mostly through brief meetings on the road and the pies she had sent after Tomas's wife died. Elena had returned every pie plate clean, but had never thanked her in person. Tomas crossed the street. Pike sent his clerk to Crew's house before sunrise, he said. The clerk carried a metal document case. Amos sighed. Tomas, unless you saw what was inside, that means nothing. Then opening the bank would settle it. Elena came closer, wrapping a red scarf around her throat. She studied Nadine with open doubt. My father thinks helping people makes them honest. It doesn't. Elena, Tomas warned. No, she should know. People came to our house after Mama died. They brought bread and looked through our rooms with their eyes. Then they talked about us in town. Kindness can be a way of buying a place in someone else's life. Nadine felt the old urge to defend herself. Instead, she noticed the girl's tight hands. You're right, she said. Kindness can be used badly. So can grief. So can fear. I brought food because your father forgot to eat, and because I knew you were too young to remind him every day. You did not owe me trust for it. You still don't. Elena's expression changed, though only a little. Tomas looked at Nadine with something warmer than gratitude and more careful than affection. Come to our ranch, he said. Inez found something you should see. Arrieta Ranch lay one valley east, where the land opened into a long bowl below gray peaks. Tomas's house was built of stone and timber, with blue shutters faded by many winters. Inez Cress met them in the kitchen. She was a small, silver-haired woman in a dark dress, with bright eyes, and the calm authority of someone who had buried the people who once tried to command her. She had cared for Elena since infancy, and had known Tomas's late wife, Marisol, from childhood. Inez placed a flour sack on the table. Inside it was a torn ledger page. Nadine recognized the relief committee's blue paper. It listed payments to 7 ranch families, but someone had written a second set of numbers in the margin. Beside each family name was a parcel number and a date. Where did you find this? Nadine asked. In the pocket of an old winter coat that belonged to Marisol, Inez said. I was mending the lining. She hid it between 2 layers of cloth. Tomas touched the page but did not pick it up. Marisol served as the school secretary. She helped families fill out relief requests. Before she got sick, she told me the numbers did not agree. I thought fever was confusing her. Pain moved across his face, quiet and deep. Nadine waited. Some grief became harder, when others hurried to comfort it. What are the parcel numbers? Elena asked. Nadine read them again. Ranch land. The Bell Place, Mercer Creek, the Trent's North Field. All families that received help after the winter of '87. Inez nodded. And all families who later lost land to Pike's Bank. Why didn't you show this before? Tomas asked her. Inez looked toward the window. Because I did not find it before. But I knew she had hidden something. On her last clear night, Marisol said, The truth is wearing a winter coat. I thought she meant a man. Perhaps she meant this. Elena's eyes filled, but her voice stayed hard. Papa, you said Mama stopped investigating. I believed she had. You told her to stop. Tomas closed his eyes for a moment. Yes. The kitchen became very quiet. Inez poured coffee, as if silence were another guest who needed serving. Nadine studied the page. The handwriting in the margin was not Marisol's. It was narrow and right-leaning. She had seen it the night before, in her own ranch ledger. Hugh wrote these numbers. Elena looked at her quickly. Your brother? Yes. Then he may have killed my mother. Elena, Tomas said. She was sick. Nadine answered carefully. Nothing on this paper changes that. But Hugh knew about the land. I need to find out how. Tomas reached for his coat. We will ask him. No. If he is involved, asking him will warn everyone else. Elena gave a bitter laugh. Now you protect him. I am protecting the evidence. Hugh has lied to me, used our land, and stood silent while the town called me a thief. I will not protect him from what he has done. but I will not accuse him of what I cannot prove. That is what they did to me. Elena looked away, ashamed but not ready to say so. Tomas put his coat back on the peg. What do you want to do? No one had asked Nadine that since the meeting. Everyone else had told her to confess, be quiet, stay home, or leave. The question returned something to her that fear had taken. I want to compare this page with the property records and the original relief book, she said. I want to know why someone thinks the first deep snow will hide the answer. For the next 4 days, the mountain held its breath. Clouds gathered above the ridge, but released only light snow. Nadine worked her ranch each morning and investigated each afternoon. Tomas came with her, never walking ahead unless the trail required it. Elena often followed, claiming she did not trust Nadine alone with Marisol's page. Inez sent food wrapped in cloth, and questions sharper than any the others thought to ask. They began at the county record room, where an elderly clerk named Mr. Sutter slept near the stove. Nadine asked for the deeds tied to the parcel numbers. Sutter found 2, then claimed the rest had been moved to Pike's Bank for preservation. Tomas pointed out that county deeds were not bank property. Sutter became pale and asked them to leave. Outside, Elena said, "He knows." "He is afraid," Nadine replied. "That is not better." "No, but it is different. Fear can be opened if you find the right key." The key was Sutter's daughter. She and her 3 small children lived on a poor patch of land near the frozen river. Nadine had delivered hay there after the woman's husband broke his leg. That evening, Sutter came to Weller Ridge, carrying a rolled document beneath his coat. "I won't testify," he said, before sitting down. "Crew can take my daughter's lease. Pike can call her loan." "Then do not testify yet," Nadine said. "Tell me what they made you change." Sutter unrolled a deed. The original owner was Martin Bell. A strip of paper had been glued over the transfer date, and a later date written on top. Under lamplight, the older ink showed faintly through. "Pike brought me 6 like this," Sutter whispered. He said the dates had been copied wrong. Crew signed as witness. Hugh Weller carried them between the bank and my office. Nadine's stomach tightened. What did Hugh receive? I don't know. But Pike opened a private account in his name. Did my brother sign the false deeds? Not where I could see. He was a messenger. At first, Sutter stared into his hat. Last month, he asked how quickly a mortgage could be called if a ranch owner faced criminal charges. The fire popped. Tomas's jaw hardened, but Nadine felt strangely calm. The deepest pain had already arrived in the meeting hall when Hugh chose the lie over her. Each new fact only gave the pain a shape. Sutter left the altered deed with them after Nadine promised to hide his name until the hearing. Tomas walked him to his horse. Elena remained at the table, tracing a scar in the wood with one finger. "Mama liked you," she said. Nadine looked up. "I liked her. I remember you bringing her tea. I thought you came because you wanted Papa to notice you." The honesty might have embarrassed another person. Nadine had lived too long among hidden thoughts to be frightened by a spoken one. "Part of me probably did want him to notice me," she said. "He was kind and I was lonely, but I never wanted your mother's place. There is no such place to take. What she was belongs to you and your father." Elena's eyes shone. He loved her so much that after she died, he stopped loving everything else halfway. Tomas stood in the open doorway. Neither of them had heard him return. Snow dusted his shoulders. Elena rose quickly and walked past him into the yard. He watched her go. "She is not wrong." Nadine folded the deed. "Children are often right in ways that are inconvenient." "And you? What do you think?" She met his eyes. "I think grief can become a house. At first it shelters you. Then one day you discover you have locked the door from the inside." Tomas looked around her kitchen, at the copper pans, the braided rug, and Ruth Weller's old clock. "What is your house?" Nadine understood the question. "Being useful. If everyone needs me, I do not have to ask whether anyone wants me." The words left her feeling bare. Tomas did not deny them or cover them with easy praise. "I want you here," he said softly, Before she could answer, something struck the side of the barn. A horse screamed. Tomas reached the yard first. The lower hay shed was burning, orange light racing across dry boards. Nadine grabbed buckets while Tomas cut the frightened horses loose. Elena came running from the field. Together, they formed a line from the pump, throwing water and snow until steam rolled around them. The fire died before reaching the main barn, but half the winter hay was black and wet. Nadine found a rag near the wall, sharp with lamp oil. Tied around it was another note. Snow hides ashes. Leave while you still can. Tomas read it, his face becoming still in a dangerous way. You cannot stay here alone. This is my home. I know. Then do not ask me to run from it. I am asking you to stay alive in it. Elena and I can sleep in the spare room. People will talk. People have talked while you fed them, worked harder than them, and saved their children. Let them exhaust themselves. Despite the smoking ruin behind her, Nadine laughed. It was a small, surprised sound. Elena stared at both of them, then picked up another bucket. I am not sleeping in the spare room, she said. It smells like Hugh's boots. I will sleep in the kitchen. That night, Tomas took the chair near the front door, while Elena slept on a cot by the stove. Nadine lay awake upstairs, listening to the old house settle. She thought of her mother. Ruth had been a large woman too, though the town called her substantial, with a respect they never offered Nadine. Ruth had known how to command a room. Nadine had known how to repair what happened after the room emptied. Near midnight, she heard a board creak below. She took the lamp and went downstairs. Tomas was awake, holding something in his hand. I found this beneath the chair, he said. It was a small brass key. Nadine recognized the faded blue thread tied through its ring. Her mother had used blue thread on keys connected to ranch business. That chair belonged in her bedroom, Nadine said. Hugh moved it down after she died. They carried the lamp upstairs. Ruth's room had remained nearly unchanged for 7 years. A wool shawl hung behind the door. Dried lavender rested in a bowl. Nadine looked at the empty place in the cabinet where the deed box had been. Mother never kept important things in one place, she said. She said a thief should have to work for his living. The brass key opened nothing in the cabinet or desk. Tomas examined the bed frame, then the floor. Nadine studied the blue thread. It matched the faded blue paint on a small wooden horse above the mantel. Her father had carved it before he disappeared. She lifted it down and heard something move inside. The horse split along a hidden seam. A rolled paper fell into her hand. It was not a deed. It was a map of the ranch, marked with a blue X beside the old spring house. Snow began heavily before dawn. It fell without wind, soft and thick, covering the burned shed and every track around it. The first deep snow had arrived. The spring house stood half a mile above the ranch, where cold water rose between 2 walls of stone. Nadine, Tomas, and Elena climbed toward it after sunrise. Snow reached their knees in open places. Elena carried Marisol's torn ledger page inside her coat. Tomas carried a shovel and rope. Nadine carried the brass key. They found the door open. The lock had been broken recently. Inside, shelves had been pulled down and stones torn from the floor. Someone else had found the hiding place. Nadine's hope sank. Then Elena pointed to a narrow channel where spring water ran beneath the wall. The mud is disturbed. Tomas knelt and reached into the icy water. His arm disappeared to the elbow. When he drew it back, he held a small metal cash box sealed with wax around the lid. The blue key opened it. Inside lay a second ranch ledger, a packet of letters, and the original deed to Weller Ridge. The deed named Nadine as owner of 2/3 of the property, and Hugh as owner of 1/3. Their mother had changed the division during her final year, though Hugh had always claimed they were equal owners. A note in Ruth's hand explained why. Hugh had already borrowed against his future share twice. Nadine had repaid both debts without knowing it. The second ledger was more troubling. Ruth had tracked private loans made by Crew and Pike to ranch families during bad winters. The The loans were paid from town relief money, but the men charged interest as if the money were their own. When families could not pay, Pike took land. Crew bought it at closed auctions. Wallace Trent, Davy's father and another councilman, supplied inflated feed bills to hide the missing funds. Hugh's name first appeared as a witness. Later, he received payments for delivering altered deeds and convincing ranchers to sign papers they could not read well. The most recent page showed a payment large enough to cover the mortgage on Weller Ridge. Beside it, in Hugh's hand, were the words, "Transfer after arrest." Nadine sat on an overturned stone trough. Her breath made a pale cloud. Tomas crouched before her. "You do not have to be strong this minute. I don't know how not to be. You sit, you breathe. That is enough." She looked down at her scarred hands. "I taught him to ride. When Mama was sick, I sold my good saddle to pay his school fees. I told myself he only needed one chance to become the man he could be. How many chances become permission? You did not make his choices. I made excuses for them." Elena stood near the doorway, holding the packet of letters. "There is one from my mother." The letter was addressed to Ruth Weller. Marisol wrote that she had discovered the relief scheme through school families. She feared Crew knew she was asking questions. She planned to copy the account numbers and meet Ruth after the spring thaw. The last lines were simple. "If my illness becomes worse, please keep what I found. Tomas is a good man, but grief frightens him before it arrives. He will choose my safety over the truth, and I cannot blame him. I hope one day Elena will understand that courage is not the absence of fear. It is deciding what fear will not be allowed to own." Tomas read the letter twice. Tears stood in his eyes but did not fall. "I told her it was not our fight," he whispered. "I said we had a child, and she was already weak." Elena moved closer. "You wanted her safe. I wanted myself safe from losing her. There is a difference." She took his hand. For several breaths, the winter, the conspiracy, and the danger became smaller than a father and daughter, finally speaking honestly about the person they both missed. Nadine placed the documents back in the box. "We need copies. We also need the original relief ledger. This proves the method, but Pike will say Mother's records are private claims, and Marisol was confused by illness." "The hearing is in 6 days, Tomas said. "Crew will try to charge you before then." "Then we have 6 days." They hid the original box beneath a loose stone in the Arrieta root cellar. Inez copied each page by hand, while Elena made a second copy. Tomas rode to 3 ranch families listed in the ledger. Nadine went to find Hugh. She found him in a room above the saloon. He opened the door with red eyes and a shirt half-buttoned. "You shouldn't be here. Neither should you." He saw the copied page in her hand and stepped back. "Where did you get that?" "Mother left records. Mother is dead. Her judgment seems alive and well." Nadine entered and closed the door. The room smelled of smoke and sour drink. Hugh sat on the edge of the bed. For the first time, he looked older than she did. "Tell me where Pike keeps the original relief ledger," she said. "If I knew, I wouldn't tell you. He is going to give you the ranch after I am arrested." "Is that what he promised?" Hugh's head lifted. "Your payment is written down. Transfer after arrest. Did you think men who steal land would honor a private promise? You don't understand. Then help me understand." He paced to the window. "Crew said the ranch was wasted under you. He said we could divide the high pasture into smaller claims and make 10 times what cattle bring. He said people already trusted you too much, and all we had to do was make them doubt." Each word hurt, because it was spoken so plainly. "Why did you want them to doubt me?" "Because when you enter a room, everyone knows what you have done for them. When I enter, they ask if Nadine sent me. So you decided to become known for this. I decided to stop living beneath you." Nadine's voice became quiet. "I never asked you to live beneath me. I asked you to stand beside me. You kept lying down and blaming me for the shadow." Hugh flinched. "Pike keeps the relief book in the bank vault. You cannot reach it." "Who wrote the warnings?" "Davy Trent. Crew told him to scare you. The fire was not supposed to spread." "And the spring house?" Hugh looked confused. "What spring house?" Nadine believed him. Someone else had broken the lock, which meant the secret was still wider than they understood. "Come to the hearing," she said. "Tell the truth. Crew will ruin me. You helped him ruin families. I am your brother. Yes, that is why this breaks my heart. It is not a reason to hide what you did." She left him sitting on the bed. Outside, the sky was white with coming snow. Several townspeople watched her cross the street. Mrs. Bell stepped away, as if guilt were a sickness Nadine might pass by touch. The next days tested more than evidence. Snow closed the southern pass, and a herd belonging to the Mercer family broke through a fence near the river. Tomas and Nadine helped drive the cattle to higher ground. Nadine's horse stumbled in a drift, throwing her hard against a bank. She rose with a bruised hip and kept riding. One of the Mercer boys stared at her in wonder. His father had called Nadine a thief at the meeting, yet she worked beside them until every animal was safe. "Why did you come?" Mr. Mercer asked afterward, unable to meet her eyes. "Because the cattle would have frozen, while I decided whether you deserved help. I am sorry for what I said." "Be sorry enough to tell the truth at the hearing. Your land number is in Pike's records." Mercer looked toward his house, where his wife stood with their baby. "If I speak, we could lose everything. You may lose it if you stay silent." On the fourth night, Elena found footprints outside the Arrieta root cellar. The loose stone had been moved, but the cash box was gone. Inez had moved it that afternoon without telling anyone. "Someone searched the spring house before us," she explained. "That meant someone knew Ruth's hiding habits. I trusted no cellar after that." "Where is the box?" Tomas asked. "Safe, Inez." She gave him a patient look. "Marisol trusted Ruth. Ruth trusted me. You may learn to do the same." The answer came the next morning, when Inez led them to the small mountain chapel. Beneath a loose board under the front pew lay the box and another bundle of papers. "I broke the springhouse lock," she admitted. "Ruth told me about the map before she died. I went there after Nadine was accused, but the water was too cold for my hands. I left the box because I could not reach it." "Why did you say nothing?" Nadine asked. "Because I did not yet know whether Hugh had placed you in the scheme or merely betrayed you. Blood makes wise people foolish. I needed to see what you would choose when you learned the truth. You tested me. Yes, it was unkind. It was also necessary." Nadine wanted to be angry. Then Inez held out the additional papers. They were the original relief ledger pages, removed from the bank by Pike's former clerk. The clerk had given them to Marisol years earlier. Marisol had hidden them in the chapel, where she once taught children to read. The pages showed every missing dollar. They also showed recent withdrawals bearing Nadine's false signature. The handwriting did not belong to Hugh. It belonged to Mayor Crew. He had signed her name himself, then used Hugh to place the false pages among the ranch books. "This can end it," Elena whispered. "Only if the town is willing to look," Tomas said. Nadine touched Marisol's letter. "Then we make it impossible for them to look away." The public hearing was held on a gray afternoon as heavy snow gathered along the western peaks. Every bench was filled. Ranch families stood against the walls, drawn by fear, curiosity, and the hope of seeing someone else disgraced. Mayor Crew sat at the long front table with Pike, Wallace Trent, and 2 county officers. Amos Reed stood near the door. Hugh occupied a chair behind the council, his face pale. Nadine entered alone. Tomas had wanted to walk beside her. She had asked him to come later with Elena and the evidence. "They already believe I need a man to speak for me," she told him. "Let them see me arrive under my own name." Whispers followed her down the aisle. Her body felt enormous beneath their eyes, as it always had when a room became cruel. She wore her mother's deep green dress, altered to fit her round waist and broad shoulders. Her grey-streaked hair was braided neatly down her back. The scars on her hands were uncovered. Crew smiled as she sat at the small table facing them. "Miss Weller, this hearing concerns the misuse of $8,000 intended for winter relief. Do you understand the seriousness of the charge?" "I understand the seriousness of stealing from hungry families," she said. "Do you?" A murmur moved through the room. Crew's smile tightened. Pike presented copies of the false withdrawals. He spoke for nearly 20 minutes about procedure, trust, and civic duty. The more he said, the less human the missing money seemed. Nadine waited. When it was her turn, she stood. "Before I answer, I ask Mrs. Bell to rise." Mrs. Bell looked frightened, but slowly stood near the back. "How much relief did you receive after the winter of '87? Nadine asked. $200 in feed and food. How much did Pike's bank later say you owed? Nearly 600. Pike leaned forward. "This is not relevant." "It is the whole reason we are here," Nadine said. "The relief fund became a private loan account. Families were charged interest on public money. When they could not pay, their land was taken." Crew struck the table. "Do you have evidence of this wild claim?" The rear doors opened. Tomas entered with Elena and Inez. Mr. Sutter followed, then Martin Bell, the Mercers, 2 widows, and Pike's former clerk. Tomas carried the metal box, but placed it on Nadine's table without opening it. The choice remained hers. Nadine took out Ruth's second ledger, Marisol's original pages, the altered deeds, and the relief records. She explained each one in simple words. Elena read her mother's letter aloud. Her voice trembled only once, at the line about deciding what fear would not be allowed to own. Pike claimed the records were stolen. Crew claimed the handwriting was false. Wallace Trent claimed he had only supplied feed at prices the council approved. Then Mr. Sutter placed the altered deed beneath a lamp and peeled back the strip covering its true date. People rose from their benches to see. Under the changed date was Crew's witness mark. "That proves an error in one deed," Crew snapped. "Then perhaps my brother can explain the others," Nadine said. Every face turned toward Hugh. He remained seated. Crew leaned close and whispered something. Hugh looked at Nadine. She saw the boy she had taught to tie a rope, the young man who had cried beside their mother's bed, and the adult who had sold her trust because admiration seemed easier to steal than earn. "Come here," she said. "Nadine, don't," he whispered. "I will not lie for you, but I will stand here while you tell the truth. That is the last shelter I can offer." Hugh rose. His legs seemed unsteady as he walked to the center of the room. At first, his words came slowly, then they gathered force. He admitted to carrying papers, arranging false signatures, and placing altered pages in Nadine's ledger. He told them Crew had promised him full ownership of Weller Ridge after Nadine's arrest. He admitted mortgaging the lower pasture and using part of the money to cover gambling losses. He named Pike, Trent, and 2 other men. Crew stood so fast his chair fell. "He is a drunk and a thief. His word means nothing." "Then why is your handwriting on the withdrawals?" Nadine asked. She placed one false signature beside a town proclamation Crew had signed that morning. The same sharp turn appeared in the letter W. The same narrow loop closed the final R. Even people who could not read well could see the match. Crew moved toward the papers. Tomas stepped forward, but Nadine raised one hand. Amos Reed reached the table first and blocked the mayor. "Sit down, Silas," Amos said. "You work for this council. I work for the county. I forgot the difference for a while." Outside, wind began to shake the windows. Inside, fear changed sides. Pike tried to leave through a back door, but 3 ranchers stood in his path. No one struck him. No one needed to. The men who had controlled the town through quiet threats suddenly looked small beneath the gaze of the people they had divided. The county officers took Crew, Pike, and Trent into custody, pending a full territorial investigation. Hugh was taken too. Before Amos led him away, he stopped beside Nadine. "Will you come see me?" he asked. She wanted to tell him yes. She had always repaired what Hugh broke. Instead, she gave him the first honest answer she had ever given without protecting him from it. "Not yet." His face crumpled. "I am sorry. I believe you feel sorry. One day, perhaps, you will become sorry enough to change." He nodded and walked away. The room did not become kind all at once. Real communities did not change as neatly as stories people told about them. Some neighbors apologized because they were ashamed. Some apologized because they feared Nadine now had power. Others avoided her eyes for months. Mrs. Bell came forward after the hearing and wept against Nadine's shoulder. "You fed my boy," she said. "I knew your heart, and I still believed them." Nadine held her gently, then stepped back. "You knew what I did for you. You did not know my heart." None of us own that knowledge about another person. Next time, ask before you join the crowd. The storm trapped everyone in town overnight. Nadine helped organize blankets in the meeting hall and made soup in the hotel kitchen. Tomas watched her move among the same people who had mocked her. He did not call her a saint. He knew better now. Mercy was not softness without limits. It was strength choosing what it would build after it had every reason to destroy. The territorial investigation lasted through winter. Pike's assets were frozen. Crew's land purchases were reviewed. Families received back deeds or fair payment. Wallace Trent sold his store to repay the relief fund. Hugh accepted a reduced sentence in exchange for full testimony. Nadine did not visit him until spring. When she finally did, they sat across from each other in a plain county room. Hugh looked thinner. "Did you save the lower pasture?" he asked. "Yes. Mother's deed and your testimony cancelled the false transfer. Your lawful third of the ranch will be used to repay the families you harmed." He nodded. "That is fair. Fair is not the same as painless." "Do you hate me?" Nadine looked at him for a long time. "No, but I no longer confuse loving you with saving you from every result of your choices." Tears filled his eyes. "I don't know who I am if I am not your brother. Then this is your chance to find out." She left with sorrow still inside her, but sorrow no longer held the reins. Spring came late to Weller Ridge. Snow withdrew from the lower fields, revealing brown grass and broken fences. Nadine stood on her porch one morning as neighbors approached in wagons. The Bells came first, then the Mercers, the widow Grace Fallon, Mr. Sutter's daughter, and families from 2 distant valleys. They gathered in her barn to discuss a new plan. Nadine offered 3,000 acres of high pasture to a protected grazing cooperative. Members would pay according to herd size, share winter feed, and vote openly on loans and land use. No single banker, mayor, or ranch owner could control the records. Elena, who had become remarkably skilled with figures, designed a system with 3 matching ledgers kept in 3 separate homes. Inez suggested a 4th copy because she had lost faith in the number 3. 4 ledgers invite 4 arguments, Tomas said. "Good," Inez answered. Honest arguments need room to breathe. The cooperative saved 17 ranches during its first year. It also changed the town in smaller ways. Public accounts were read aloud each month. Widows signed their own deeds. People who could not read were given time to learn what a paper meant before placing a mark on it. The relief fund became what it had claimed to be, help without a hidden rope attached. Nadine's name was cleared in the county paper, but printed words did not heal everything. She still heard laughter when she entered a room too quickly. Sometimes the laughter had nothing to do with her, yet her body remembered every old insult. She still hesitated before sitting in a narrow chair. She still wondered whether a stranger's kindness hid a joke. Choosing herself was not one grand moment at the hearing. It was a quiet decision she had to repeat. Elena began spending 2 afternoons a week at Weller Ridge, helping with the ledgers and learning to manage cattle. Her distrust softened into a fierce loyalty that Nadine never asked for but deeply treasured. One day, while repairing a gate, Elena said, "I was cruel to you because I was afraid Papa would love someone and forget Mama." Nadine pulled wire tight with her scarred hands. "Love is not a room with one chair." I know that now. Knowing once is a beginning. Most good truths have to be learned many times. Elena smiled. "Inez says you talk like an old book." Inez is an old book. She says that too. Their laughter traveled across the field. Tomas heard it as he rode up from the creek. He had begun visiting without inventing reasons, though he still brought fence tools, seed or coffee, as if affection required a supply list. Nadine enjoyed watching him try. He joined her on the porch at sunset. The valley below was green, with small patches of snow shining on the distant peaks. "I spoke to Elena," he said. "That sounds serious. She told me to stop finding chores and say what I came to say." A wise young woman. Tomas removed his hat. He looked more nervous than he had during the hearing. "When Marisol died, I believed the best part of my life had ended. I kept Elena safe. I kept the ranch alive. I called that living, because I did not know what else to call it." Nadine waited, her hands folded over her round middle. "Then you stood in that hall, while a town tried to reduce you to a lie," he continued. "You did not become what they said. You did not let what Hugh did decide who you would be. You showed me grief does not have to be the final owner of a life. Tomas, let me finish before courage leaves me." She nodded. "I love you, Nadine. Not because you need protection. You have protected more people than I ever will. Not because I think love is a reward for suffering. I love your judgment, your temper when it is deserved, the way you make room for truth even when it hurts, and the way you laugh as if it surprises you. I love the woman you are when no one needs anything from you." Nadine looked toward the mountains. For years, she had imagined being chosen as a kind of rescue. A man would see past her body, lift her from loneliness, and prove the cruel voices wrong. Standing beside Tomas, she understood the hidden trap in that dream. If another person's love established her worth, another person's rejection could still take it away. "I love you too," she said. "But I will not disappear into your life. I would not ask you to. I will keep this ranch." "Good. Arrieta gates hang crooked. I may need somewhere respectable to visit. Elena remains free to love her mother, without protecting my feelings, always. And Inez does not move into my kitchen and reorganize it." Tomas considered this. "That may be beyond my power to promise." Nadine laughed, and he took her hand. His fingers traced the old scars without treating them as wounds. When he kissed her, it was quiet and certain. The mountains did not change. The wind remained cold at that height. Work waited in every field. Love did not erase the hard parts of her life. It simply met her there, without asking her to become smaller. They married in early autumn, beneath the cottonwoods beside the cooperative barn. Nadine wore deep blue wool and left the gray in her hair uncovered. Tomas stood beside her, with Elena on one side and Inez on the other. Half the town attended. Some came from love, some from gratitude, and some because they understood that history was happening close enough to touch. Mrs. Bell brought bread. The Mercers brought honey. Mr. Sutter brought a new wooden box with 4 locks, one for each cooperative ledger. Even Davy Trent came. He stood at the edge of the gathering until Nadine noticed him. "Mrs. Arrieta," he said awkwardly, "I am sorry for what I called you that night." Nadine studied the young man. "Have you spoken that way to anyone since?" "No, ma'am." "Then keep being sorry in that direction." He nodded, relieved that forgiveness had been given as work instead of a performance. After the wedding meal, Elena read Marisol's line about courage. Then she added words of her own. "My mother helped uncover the truth. Nadine carried it into the light. Neither woman replaced the other. Together, their courage changed what the rest of us believed was possible." Tomas lowered his head, overcome. Nadine reached for his hand. Inez openly wept while denying it to anyone who asked. Years later, travelers crossing the mountain often stopped at Weller Ridge. They heard about the winter relief theft and the woman falsely accused. Depending on who told the story, Nadine had faced 20 corrupt men, crossed a blizzard alone, or frightened Mayor Crew into confessing with one look. The truth was quieter and stronger. She had followed ink through old ledgers. She had listened when grief spoke through a hidden letter. She had made frightened people see that their safety depended on one another. She had refused revenge when rebuilding offered a harder and more lasting justice. The cooperative grew into 3 valleys. Its storehouses kept grain for deep winters. Its rules prevented secret mortgages and closed auctions. Every child in the district learned to read a deed before leaving school. Elena eventually became the county recorder, and kept Marisol's letter framed above her desk. Hugh returned after serving his sentence, but Nadine did not hand him his old place. He worked first for another rancher, paid what he could to the families he had harmed, and learned the slow dignity of earning trust without demanding it. Years passed before Nadine invited him to supper. Even then, forgiveness did not mean forgetting. It meant the past no longer made every decision at the table. On winter evenings, Nadine and Tomas sat on the wide porch when the weather allowed. Her body remained broad and heavy, her face round, her hair increasingly silver. Tomas never spoke of loving her despite those things. There was no despite in his love. He loved the warmth of her beside him, the strength in her hands, the steady rhythm of her steps across the old floor, and the way her presence made the ranch feel awake. One evening, deep snow covered the valley until every fence and roof shone beneath the moon. Nadine held the first warning note above the stove. She had kept it all those years, not from fear, but as a measure of distance traveled. "The mountain keeps what it covers," Tomas read over her shoulder. "They were wrong," she said. "About which part?" She fed the note to the fire. The edges curled, and the cruel words became light. "Snow does not only bury things. Sometimes it makes every track easier to see." Tomas placed his hand over hers. Inside the house, Elena and Inez argued cheerfully about where to store the latest cooperative ledger. Outside, cattle rested safely behind repaired fences. Lamps glowed in homes that still belonged to the families who worked them. Nadine watched the last black piece of the warning turn to ash. The town had once treated her as a woman to use in private and mock in public. It had mistaken patience for weakness, generosity for hunger, and a large body for a small life. Nadine had answered without becoming cruel. She had restored her name, reclaimed her inheritance, and built protection for people who had failed to protect her. Tomas had chosen her openly, but by then she had already made the choice that mattered first. She had chosen her own voice, her own boundaries, her own future, and the full space she occupied in the world. As snow fell softly over Weller Ridge, Nadine leaned into the man beside her and listened to the living sounds of the home around them. She no longer needed every person to depend on her. She no longer measured love by how much pain she could carry without complaint. The mountains had not made her worthy, and the town's apology had not made her whole. She had always been both. All that changed was that she finally knew it, and once Nadine Weller knew her own value, no banker, brother, mayor, whisper, or winter could ever take it from her again.